I have not slept through the night in 3 years.
This is Taylor.
I wake up screaming in a panic. And I'm like, why? How did I end up here,
And her mom, Rochelle.
And when she was 6 was the first time that she expressed suicidal ideation. And I remember driving in the car and she said, "Mom, what would happen if I just jumped out of the car right now?"
And this is Luca and his mom, Martha.
Without any of this, I wouldn't be alive.
Everybody who was there loved these boys and loved their families.
Taylor and Luca are both 20 years old. Both struggled with their mental health as children and entered behavioral treatment programs as preteens. Taylor and Luca are just two of the tens of thousands of young adults who've gone through youth treatment programs, an estimated multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry. Nationwide, there are hundreds of residential programs. The facilities and schools often promise to help kids gain coping skills and return home ready to be productive members of their communities. But what happens when that child returns with more trauma than when they went into treatment? Are families getting the help they expected? How can anyone tell which programs actually work and who's footing the bill? This is a CBS News investigation of what critics call the troubled teen industry.
This is my personal reptile haven. We have Edison, my Russian tortoise. Yay!
Like lots of kids, Taylor Kiesel always loved animals,
Taylor, what do you have?
A grasshopper.
especially the slimy and scaly ones.
Ducky is a fan favorite. Hi, my love. It's okay, it's just me, I know.
She's already gotten a head start on opening her own reptile rescue at home with mom, Rochelle, just outside Seattle. The two have been close since Taylor was little, which is also when Taylor started exhibiting behaviors that worried Rochelle.
I could see that she was struggling. I could see that she was anxious.
Taylor's dad left when she was 5. In first grade, she was diagnosed with autism.
I remember driving in the car and she said, "Mom, what would happen if I just jumped out of the car right now?" It's not something that you would normally hear from a 6-year-old.
Rochelle started looking into residential options after years of therapy and hospitalizations failed to stop Taylor from trying to end her life.
The first thing that you think of as a parent is, I'll do whatever it takes just to make sure that she's okay.
After Taylor lashed out at staff in a few short-term programs, Rochelle says she was out of options. A consultant suggested a longer-term placement in Missouri, a residential treatment center called Change Academy Lake of the Ozarks, or Calo.
It's based on hours and hours that I spent on the phone and in person touring Calo, nearly 100 questions, research. I felt like Calo was going to be the best place for her in terms of their trauma-informed approach.
So you did your homework.
I did a lot of homework.
Did you feel like Calo was the last resort?
I did.
But Taylor says she knew almost immediately after arriving at Calo that something was off.
How early on did you realize this was not normal?
Day one. The way that other kids treated each other, how the staff would pit us against each other, was not normal.
Today, they are one of 15 families suing Calo in civil court for allegations ranging from negligent infliction of emotional distress to battery. While Calo would not sit down for an interview, in a statement the company told CBS News the lawsuits are without merit and denied all allegations of abuse, neglect, and battery.
You're suing Calo.
Yes.
Why are you doing that?
Because they need to be shut down.
We spoke with dozens of Calo families, former residents, and former staffers, many of whom describe a violent, often out-of-control environment, a characterization supported by police records obtained by CBS News. Former residents tell us brawls would break out, like the one seen in this video, which was shared with us by a former Calo family. When asked about the video, Calo told CBS News the video, which it says is 6 years old, was a staged incident by students using a stolen phone, adding staff responded according to protocol and rejecting any characterization that it reflects conditions at the facility. Police records show more than 400 calls to the sheriff's office linked to Calo's address over the past decade, including repeat and follow-up calls. Hundreds of pages of incident reports we reviewed paint a disturbing picture, from deputies finding a 12-year-old convulsing after seemingly swallowing an unknown object, to a 15-year-old cutting a large gash in her arm with pieces of a toilet she'd broken, to residents stabbing staffers with wooden shards from a broken bed frame. CBS News also confirmed that at least 4 former staffers have been convicted of crimes committed while they were employed at Calo, including sexually assaulting residents and possessing child pornography. But how much can a program really do to keep residents safe if the staffers didn't commit crimes until after they had access to children? In a statement to CBS News, Calo says each individual passed a state and federal background check prior to being hired. The incidents were immediately reported to the state, and each employee was immediately placed on leave and eventually terminated.
It's worse than I thought it was.
We showed Caleb Cunningham some of the records. Now a civil litigator in Florida, he was the lead prosecutor from 2021 to 2023 in Camden County, Missouri, where Calo is located.
Quite frankly, I have expected a call about Calo. It's the perfect environment for these things to happen. And we see the same problems happening again and again and again across the country. There's very few problems in America where we just have ignored it entirely like we have this industry.
Can you describe Calo's leadership's level of willingness to participate with investigations?
Well, I can tell you that was infamous amongst law enforcement that they would not cooperate.
Calo strongly disputes Cunningham's characterization and pointed us to a recent letter from the current county sheriff affirming Calo's high standard of professionalism and willingness to work cooperatively with law enforcement to address situations effectively and responsibly. We asked Cunningham to read an email we obtained sent from Calo to parents, including Rochelle.
We ask that you support and back up Calo to your child in the moment, and then get clarification outside of his presence. I'm not as bad as everyone else here. The staff beat up the students. Mom, you have to believe me. My roommate is an aggressive, psychotic pervert. Jesus. This is the standard behavior that I was talking about, and it's interesting to see it in writing, that they're going to divide the parents from their child at the outset, so that the only source of information is coming from them. Because these kids do have problems, and they have a history, some of them, of not telling the truth. And so they've burnt the credibility that an average child may have with their families. But half of these examples are in the narrative reports of things that actually happened at Calo.
If you were a prosecutor right now, would you be trying to get Calo shut down?
Absolutely. It's one of my regrets. There has to be regulation and legislation to fix this.
Our investigation found that taxpayers are sometimes footing the bill for private programs through school district funding.
Is this a copy of the IEP?
This is.
Taylor was sent out of Washington State by her school district under the terms of her IEP, or Individualized Education Program. The Federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, guarantees students with special needs a free education in the least restrictive environment possible.
These are a handful of her nursing notes.
Rochelle says she began trying to get Calo removed from the state's list of approved IEP placement options after Taylor was injured during restraints by staff in 2022.
So it essentially outlines what marks she had on her in terms of bruising, black eyes, abrasions.
The state said that the organization was responsive to feedback and has taken steps to address any past concerns, so for now it will stay on the list. Rochelle says one of Taylor's therapists back home also reported the treatment center to Missouri's Department of Social Services.
The report alleged physical abuse, and then they determined it's insufficient evidence. When you read that, what did you think?
I was floored because I'd given them exact people to talk to that I knew would speak up.
Every single time I was restrained, it was physically provoked.
So you're saying that Calo staffers would confront and escalate to the point where they would be able to restrain you?
100%. Yeah.
You talk about being physical, kicking holes in walls, biting, throwing things. Why do you believe that it was the program that was abusive?
I have never been a violent person. Confrontation scares me. It always has. But every single time I have been cornered, I have been grabbed, it sets off these alarm bells in my head where my fight or flight kicks in. There was no winning it.
Where did you find the resolve to find a way out? If you felt that much hopelessness and that nobody was believing you, how did you decide, I have to get out of here?
I didn't. I gave up.
I actually got a call from who works in admissions, and she said, just so you know, I watched the video of what happened, and that was absolutely avoidable. I was like, there's somebody here. There's somebody here who is watching out for my child. So
But
I
today,
can't
Rochelle
say
believes
that
she was wrong to think that. We also asked her about that email we mentioned earlier.
Hindsight, looking back, I realize it's a setup because all of the things that were in this email were things that she was saying. And so it's almost like subconsciously you are taught to dismiss these things.
And you did that.
Yes,
And thinking back on it now, how does that make you feel?
horrible.
But you couldn't have known.
I feel like I should have. I should have. It's my biggest regret as a parent. In her entire life, I have not been a perfect parent, but never in a million years would I wish to cause her harm or cause her hurt and pain and trauma. And I don't want to see any other child go through what she's gone through, but I also don't want to see any other parent live with the guilt that I will forever live with, because you can't take it back.
Missouri's Department of Social Services tells CBS News there have been 5 findings of physical abuse and 5 findings of sexual abuse involving Calo programs over the last 20 years.
I wish that none of those bad experiences happened because it's ultimately meant to change your life.
Remember
And it's
20-year-old
changed so
Luca?
many of me and my
He had a
friends'
very
lives.
different experience at a different residential program.
There are really good programs out there that are doing it right.
We sat
all
down with
across
Luca
the
and his
country,
mother
in
Martha,
other
who
countries,
says the program Luca
and
entered saved his
all you
life.
really need to
They
do
asked us to
is
use their first names only to protect their family's privacy.
Even though I would have bad days where I was super upset or super depressed, staff handled it really well. They weren't just regular staff. They really cared. They did it for a purpose. They're not just there for a job.
Everybody who was there loved these boys and loved their families.
In 2019, when Luca was 12, his parents sent him to a wilderness therapy program and later a therapeutic boarding school. That's a school that provides therapeutic support and counseling in addition to an education.
There's an awful lot that we tried before we got
Right.
to therapeutic wilderness and boarding schools. He was in a partial program for a while, coming home at nights, but he was still kind of angry and a little bit dangerous at home afterwards. So during the program, during a break, one of the therapists sort of found him in the break room, cutting, and she asked him what you're doing, and he pretty much said to her, when I get home, I'm killing myself.
I was always upset. I would fight about homework, about anything really, and I would take it out on the people who really cared about me.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought, this is just too much, I can't deal with this?
Always, I felt like it was always too much.
We were connected with Martha and Luca through the trade group NATSAP, the National Association of Therapeutic Schools and Programs. The Idaho school Luca attended, Cherry Gulch, shut down last year due in part to dwindling enrollment. But Martha says their experience shows this type of treatment with the right staffing can work.
And I just would want families to know that there are places and there are programs that really might be the answer. And it's worth the time.
But then there's the money.
Did you have a sense of how expensive this could be?
No, we had no idea.
Despite Luca being approved for an IEP, the family says the bills kept piling up.
We ended up depleting 2 savings accounts and 2 retirement accounts. And we ended up taking out a loan against some other assets that we have in order to just pay the monthly bill.
That bill, she says, was around $12,000 a month, a high but relatively standard price tag. She estimates the family paid nearly $500,000 between the school and other programs over the course of 2+ years. Insurance and school district funds reimbursed only about 1/3 of that cost. But they kept paying, they say, because
but in
Luca
the
was
moment-
improving.
As a parent, you're doing everything you can to find something that's going to work.
What would your message be to families who say, this kind of treatment is just completely unaffordable?
Well, it is very expensive, and I don't have a good solution for that.
We met Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley in the nation's capital to talk about the state of youth residential treatment nationwide.
What happens is a lot of times when you have unregulated care, it can often become abuse.
The Democrat passed the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act in 2024 with the help of Republican colleagues and celebrity socialite and former youth treatment program resident Paris Hilton. The bill instructed the Department of Health and Human Services to contract a study examining programs across the country, but stopped short of mandating federal oversight. The study is expected to be completed as early as the middle of next year.
The argument for a number of my colleagues was, we're not sure how extensive the problem is. We're reluctant to have regulation be a step taken before we understand it better, so it doesn't say put everybody out of business and then there's no place, even great places, for children to get help who need help. So I am hoping that the results of this study will help overcome the initial resistance.
You're hoping. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible.
The intense public scrutiny has led some programs to shut their doors, leaving many families with fewer options. Since 2010, the number of residential treatment centers, for instance, has decreased by about 60%.
I think we'd all who have had a good experience here, or even a bad experience, would want a minimum standard of care.
We asked Martha and Luca what changes they want to see.
I want your opinion on these. One, creating a national database of programs that include families, reviews, and complaints. You think that's a good idea?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What about standardizing licensure requirements for programs?
Absolutely.
A federal Bill of Rights for children in residential facilities?
Yeah.
Mandating the programs hold on to security video footage for longer than 48 or 72 hours if there's an incident.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense.
We posed the same questions to Rochelle and Taylor. They agreed.
I would like to see strict oversight of these programs, from when restraints are used, how they're used. Video needs to be saved for years.
I'm doing so good.
But for everyone, the main focus these days is keeping their past struggles in the rearview mirror.
I snowboard, I go hiking all the time with my friends.
I am taking that anger and that sadness and passion that I feel, I am turning it into something by opening my own rescue and loving the unloved.
On the other side of this, seeing the person Taylor is growing into, how does that make you feel?
I'm really proud of her. She's been through a lot, and despite all of it, I tell her I'm proud of her all the time. I wish that she didn't have to struggle so much to work through all this trauma. I wish that I had a magic wand and could make it go away. But I'm here for the long haul.